Many people that are getting ready to retirement have true fears about their finances when they're moving into that retirement age. Looking at a study from 2023, 75% of individuals over the age of 50 had legitimate fears about Social Security and if it is going to be there when they do get to retirement, and is it going to last to the point of their life where they pass. Now, you don't have to worry about that because in this video, we're going to be talking about collecting $50,000 a year. That is right, $50K a year in dividends during retirement. That way you don't have to worry about supplementing Social Security. And if it is there, great. If it's not there, you are still going to be covered. Now, of course, for this, we are going to use my favorite, which is the ETFs or the exchange traded funds, to really simplify the investment strategy. A lot of people ask why I don't invest in individual stocks. It is really a good buy, a bad buy, a stronghold. There are so many variations when it comes to the stock market and holding individual stocks, which is the reason why I advise going into diversified ETFs. So not only are you invested into and diversifying the risk, it eliminates all of the guesswork and the analytics that can come with having to really break down individual stocks. Now, for this video, we're going to be looking at the ETF, which is the Invesco QQQ Trust. A lot of people might be familiar with this. We see television commercials about it. With the Invesco QQQ Trust, it is an exceptional investment that has been over a multitude of years. Over the last decade, this fund has returned a 415% return over 10 years, which gives you an annualized compounding growth interest of 17.8%. That is kind of insane to see, almost an 18% compounding growth rate out of an ETF. But overall, with some excellent growth stocks, even looking at the S&P 500, it roughly yields a 10%. So you're almost doubling. You have a 7.8% increase by investing in this as the Invesco QQQ Trust. Now we're going to break this down mathematically and show you kind of what the difference is. So if you think, and if you don't have a big lump sum to push into the stock market today, investing early, investing often is going to be one of the biggest things to generate a very large balance when it comes to retirement. For this scenario, we're putting in $50 a week. That is right, a $50 bill every single week, which means we're putting $200 in a month. Now, of course, with the current economic conditions, this might be a little bit difficult, but if you don't do it, it is going to be detrimental when it comes to retirement. And of course, through cutting some costs, possibly putting in some extra work, getting a side hustle, you can get this $200 in there every single month, which means over the course of the year, we're putting in $2,600. But how could investing in the QQQ with a same rate of return or even a little bit lower, we're going to actually take this down to a 15% return. Now, remember, the QQQ over the last 10 years has been 17.8, but we're going to have to see exactly what the future holds. So in that very first year, you're putting in your $2,600, you're going to get $2,808 back. That is right. In the very first year, you made $208 on the investment. Definitely well worth it. When you start getting into 5 years, now you're looking at $19,000 plus in that investment account. And again, we're only putting the $50 a week. We're putting $2,600 a year. Now it's up to $19,000. But now we get 10 years in, which is a good earmark, a milestone, 10 years of investing that $2,600 every single month. This is going to take you to just north of $60,000. So as you can see, the compounding factor in the nest egg is really starting to grow. With 10 years, you're already at $60,000 with only investing $26,000, the $2,600 over 10 years. So literally you've over doubled your money. You've almost, you're moving on towards well over doubling the money at this point, just based on the return. Now we get into 15 years. Your 10 year was $60,000. The 15 year is $147,000. And now you're feeling the effects of the compounding interest when it comes to this ETF. But again, we look a little bit further. 15 years, we're at 147. When you add on just 5 more years, 147 goes to $330,000. That is right. You are doubling because of the compounding effect that we have in here. 20 to 25 years, you go from 330 to 717. That is right. We're doubling again within those 5 years based on the growth factor, which is huge. And then we get 28 years in. This is the pivotal point. So if you've been investing for 28 years at this point, you'd be sitting on $1.1 million. This, of course, is only investing $2,600 a year. In 28 years, you can see the compounding $1.1 million in there, which is kind of crazy. Now, also, when you think of a 401k, a $23,000 contribution max, When you think of IRAs with a $7,000 contribution match or contribution limit, putting away $2,600 seems pretty feasible when you look at the limits of what these investment accounts can do, even if you're putting it into a 401k or anything of that nature. As long as you have the growth factor in there, exponential growth will come over time. Now, of course, with that $1.1 million, we are not at our $50,000 in dividends yet because the QQQM doesn't have a very high dividend yield. But even if you started progression later, so let's say you started this strategy at age 37, by the time you're 65, you are going to have that $1.1 million in there 28 years later, which means you can move that 1.1 million into something that is much safer. That is going to pay you a good percent return. Even looking at a couple different funds, the Spider S&P 500 high dividend yields a 4.5% return. Holding Citigroup, holding Ford Motor Company, Iron Mountain, this 1.1 million invested is going to give you 50K a year in a very low risk, high dividend yield. And even when you think big picture, if this is offering 4.5%, if the money is in a CD, which most of them are paying over 5% right now, if you have it in a high yield savings account, which again is paying roughly about 5%, you are still pulling in $50,000 in dividends every single year. And of course, the rhetoric or the thoughts of Dave Ramsey, the really teachings, is when you look at your 1.1 million, that is going to be the golden goose. That is going to be the investment account that you are not going to touch. That is going to sit there giving you your 50K every single year. With that 50,000, and of course, hopefully the supplement from Social Security, you're going to be able to live a pretty lavish life. When you think of the annual income of an individual in the United States, it is roughly around 60,000 as it is right now. And even during retirement, if you're getting 50K a year, as long as you're keeping your expenses low, you have that mortgage paid off, the $50,000 is going to give you a substantial amount of income. Because also remember with Social Security, it is meant to replace 40% of your income. It was never meant to be the one that replaces 100% of your income. At 40% of your income, if you're making an additional 50,000 in dividends every single year, that is going to be, for myself, a pretty sweet retirement overall. Now, of course, when it comes to ETFs, like I said earlier, they really build a diversified portfolio, a safe investment plan because of the overall risk mitigation and being in a lot of different things. When you start looking at the top 100 stocks, you're not picking one single stock with the Invesco QQQ, you're putting it into 100 different companies that are high performing. And of course, this is actively managed, making a big difference. But when you look at this, again, $50,000 in dividends is going to be a game changer for a majority of us, especially if you're working up to 65 or if you started this earlier. Because when you do the math and thinking, let's say you even start at 20, by the time, if at the age of 20, you're putting away your $2,600, at the age of 48, so you are many years off of retirement age, but at the age of 48, you could be having that $1.1 million in the investment account. You could be getting $50,000 in dividend every single year. And at the age of 48, as long as you could essentially substantiate that for the years going forward, you could retire with $50,000 a year that is going to be guaranteed from your investment portfolio, not have to work and retire early with an income that is coming in every single year going into retirement. There's a lot of different ways that you could do this because even at that factor, if you're at 28 years that you're investing, again, that 2,600 every month or 2,600 every year, even if you push it out 30, 32, 35, 40 years, let's say from 20 to 40, you invest for that 40-year period. Now you're 60 years old, you want to go ahead and retire. The 1.1 essentially goes into about $4 million if you combine it and compile it over 40 years, which is kind of crazy to think of the exponential factor that you can get from investing. And again, the earlier that you're investing and the more that you're investing, you can either have this slow down a little bit or you can have it go much, much faster with the retirement accounts and also making that 50K a year. So, all right, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.